Okay, good morning, all of you. I hope I'm audible to you and screen is visible. So let me know. Then I will start.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Thank you. Okay, so we need to discuss all these theoretical points as per your syllabus. Okay. So let's try to finish these points. We are already done with this first unit. So I'll let you know when you will be having the test on this first unit. I will just let you know in the group. In second unit, last time we started with this relevant data and its collection. We started with this unit. So in that we actually talked about this particular point, that is people-centric approach. Then we have seen organizing social media, choosing focus data sources, and collecting and understanding social media data. Till this point we have discussed, right? So I will again repeat that. Okay, see, all these points are like in general. It's not difficult to understand these things actually. Just you need to have an idea about that particular concept with the help of some example, and then you can explore. So you people, I hope you people also have a good idea about all these kind of points, because in general you might have come across all these points many times, right? So relevant data and its collection. So this particular unit revolves around again data, and especially for this particular subject, social media data, I can say. So we have already seen different examples of social media. So you can take any social media and you can have what you can say, you can imagine it like, take the social media data from any social media and you can imagine all the points whatever we are going to now discuss. So let's try to start with the next point now, and that is nothing but leveraging the qualitative data by understanding what, why, and how much. Let's try to talk about this particular point. So obviously, before going and discussing this particular point, one should be aware about what do you mean by qualitative data. So what is the meaning of this particular word? Qualitative data. Data we have already seen, right? So as it is talking about this particular term, qualitative data. So what is the meaning of qualitative data? Which type of a data one can say that it's a qualitative data? Because later on you will again come across, maybe in lab you will come across one more term, and which is nothing but quantitative data. So this is again one type of a data, qualitative and quantitative. These are the two types I can say. So first of all we need to see what is this one. So as it is talking about this particular term, qualitative data, right? And then we will try to understand what, why, and how. And then we'll try to understand how to leverage that qualitative data. So maybe in machine learning subject, or maybe while discussing some statistics, you might have come across all these types. So you might be knowing there are different types like ordinal, like uh, nominal. So you might have heard about these types of data, or levels, I can say, levels of data, ordinal level or nominal level, or one is called as ratio, and another one is called as interval. Okay, so these are the different levels of data, I can say, right? So when we talk about qualitative data, these two levels are going to come into picture. So let's see which can be the what can be the examples to understand qualitative data. So quantitative, whenever we talk about quantitative, is like we can represent them in terms of numbers, right? So for example, ratio. So I have numbers like 2, 4, 8, 16, and so on. So you can take the ratio of consecutive numbers. Interval, right? Interval or gap, you can say 1, 3, 5, 7, and so on. Interval. Now what is ordinal and what is nominal? So again there are different examples. So order is like, for example, maybe if you take a attribute, or what you can say, um, a column as a passenger class. So passenger class column can have different classes, right? first class, second class, third class, and so on. Or you can take example of a rank in a class, right? First, second, and so on. So order, it actually represents some order. So similarly, these two things actually come under qualitative. So we will try to talk about this particular thing because they have mentioned a point called as leveraging qualitative data by understanding what, why, and how much. Right. So let's try to talk about that particular term, qualitative data, and then we will see how to leverage the qualitative data, and then we will talk about data analysis for qualitative data. So qualitative data analysis actually requires certain steps or process. So whenever we talk about leveraging the qualitative data, right? So there are certain steps which are going to come into picture. First of all, obviously, the first step is going to be preparation of your data and prepare and organize your data. I can say, right? Prepare and organize. So what do you mean by prepare and organize? So some part of data pre-processing, data cleaning is going to come into picture here, which you might have come across in machine learning kind of subject. Okay, so prepare and organize your data. That can be the first step for leveraging the qualitative data for data analysis, right? So what do you mean by this? What do you mean by this one? So for example, maybe you need to print out some transcripts, or maybe you need to gather some notes, some documents, or some other material. So all those things are going to come into first step for leveraging the qualitative data. Second step can be you need to explore. I can say exploring the data, right? Or I can say explore and review. Explore and review your data. So that can be another thing. And then you can go and you can create some codes for your data. Initial codes, I can say. Create initial codes so that you will be able to identify the data. For example, what we do generally, whenever we want to develop some machine learning models, maybe predictive models or classification models. So what we do is, suppose if we get some data and which is qualitative or categorical data is again one example of qualitative data, I can say. So it can be like this. Suppose I have a categorical data, and in that we have this particular column, gender. So gender has two values, two categories. For example, male and female. So what I can do is male is 0 and female is 1. So assign some codes to your data. If you want to analyze qualitative data, you need to assign some codes, because at the end of the day, there are some techniques with the help of which you can go and you can develop some models, but those models actually require some algorithms or some techniques. So your data should be in this format. That's the basic requirement. So create some initial codes for your data. Once the creation of codes is done, you can go and you can review those codes with the help of some techniques, right? And you can revise or combine into themes or patterns, I can say. And then what you can do is, once the themes or the patterns are created, you can present those themes in some manner. So present the themes or the patterns in some cohesive manner, I can say, right? So these are some of the steps, or I can say a process for data analysis, which is for qualitative data, I can say, right? So in general, these are some of the steps. Now talking and exploring this particular point, leveraging qualitative data, right? So there might be a question like, what are the different types of qualitative data, right? So as we have seen, that I told you that qualitative data is of two types, namely nominal and ordinal. Just now at the start, I have given you the different levels of data. So you can say qualitative data can be of two types, nominal and ordinal. So qualitative data sometimes takes up numerical values, but it doesn't have numeric properties actually. So this is a common case in ordinal data, I can say. Even though they will take numerical values, but they do not have numeric properties actually. Right. So as I have already given you the examples of passenger class, right? So you can have you can remember those things, or you might have order. Ordinal data is like it actually tells you some order. Nominal is like in numbers. right? But they might not be having some numerical properties. You might not go, you cannot go and actually apply some mathematical operations on those kind of data. Okay, so these are two types of qualitative data: nominal, ordinal. Ratio and interval can come under quantitative. Okay. Now, with regards to this particular thing, qualitative data, there comes a term called as qualitative approach. Right? So we will see what is this qualitative approach and how it can be applied and why it is necessary actually. So a qualitative approach is a general way of thinking about conducting qualitative research. It actually describes, or I can say either explicitly or implicitly, the purpose of qualitative research is actually described by qualitative approach. Or I can say the role of researchers, the stages of research, and the method of data analysis is actually represented by qualitative approach. Whatever the method, whatever the process we make use of in quality approach in data analysis, that can actually be represented by quality approach. Right now, as we are talking about qualitative data, so there might be a question that, okay, as I told you that there is nominal and ordinal. So there can be a question like, can someone go and count qualitative data, or qualitative data can be counted? Is it right? So qualitative data is a data that can either be counted or compared on numerical scale. Right? So qualitative data may be difficult to precisely measure and analyze. Right? So the data may be in the form of descriptive words that can be examined for patterns or meaning, or sometimes to the use of coding. That's why I told you that what we do whenever we get qualitative data, what we do is we try to convert that particular data into some codes so that there should be a comparison. Right? And we have already seen some examples just to get the idea, right? If I want to give a very simple example, you can have a lot of examples for qualitative data. So talking about the examples of qualitative data, some simple examples in real time or maybe in daily life, I can say. So maybe you can say, mm, just for example, maybe the color of cars, I can say, right? The color of cars in a parking lot, that can be the example of qualitative data. All the colors, right? So it's not like a numerical data. Or I can say the letter of grades of students in a classroom, right? A grade, B grade, C grade, and so on. That can be the example of qualitative data. Or maybe the types of coins in a jar, right? And the shape of candles, right? Or I can say, maybe depending on shape you can arrange them in some order. Okay, so these are all the examples of qualitative data. So, in case of quality data, what happens is, so long as particular number is not assigned to any of these descriptions, it's a quality data. So, cars of colors. So, not a specific number is actually assigned to all of them, right? So, that's the example of qualitative data. Okay, and now there are different methods that can be used to analyze qualitative data. So, if I want to talk about the methods most commonly used for data analysis in case of qualitative data, it can be like content analysis. So we have already talked about the term called as content, right? So content analysis can be done for qualitative data. So this is one of the most common methods to analyze qualitative data, I can say. That is content analysis. There can be something else which is called as narrative analysis. So this is how you can actually leverage this qualitative data by understanding it and by applying this kind of analysis on that data. So narrative analysis is what it can be applied on. It can also be applied on qualitative data. So this method is used. This narrative analysis method is actually used to analyze content from various sources. So which are the sources? It can be, as I am talking about narrative, right? So the sources such as maybe the interviews of some respondents, observations from the field, or maybe surveys. These are the examples from where the data can be collected and which can be used for narrative analysis, which is actually done for qualitative data, right? And as we were talking about qualitative approach, again you will see if you read or if you search, you will see there are different approaches, different types of approaches which can be applied for or which can be taken as a type of quality approaches. There are different types. There are different approaches which can be applied for qualitative data. So the approach is like qualitative research, which focuses on the methodologies of major traditions in qualitative research, right? So depending on the domain, you will find out there are different approaches which can be used for qualitative data. Right now, as we are talking about, as we have heard this particular word qualitative data many times right now with regard to this particular point. So, what is the difference between qualitative and quantitative techniques? So, in a nutshell, I can say qualitative research actually generates textual data. So, whenever we talk about qualitative research, it generates textual data for qualitative. Okay, that is non-numerical, I can say textual or non-numerical. Talking about quantitative research, on the contrary, it produces numerical data. So whenever it's qualitative, you are going to get textual or non-numerical data. Whenever you talk about quantitative, it produces numerical data or information that can be converted into numbers, I can say. That's the basic difference between qualitative and quantitative technique, right? So suppose now there can be different examples for both, right? So examples of quantitative data, uh, there can be more of them. So qualitative examples we have already seen. Examples of quantitative data are scores, right? For example, score is example of quantitative data. Scores on achievement tests, number of hours study, or rate of a subject. All these are the examples of qualitative data, right? Score is the example of quantitative data, right? So these data may be represented by ordinal, interval, or ratio scales, right? And lend themselves to something, some manipulation, right? And qualitative data cannot be expressed as a number. Very basic difference, right? So the examples of quantitative data are like scores, weight, or hours of study. Wherever there is number, it's an example of quantitative data, and wherever there are no numbers, it is qualitative data. That's the basic difference. Now, just to extend this particular point, leverage qualitative data by understanding what, why, and how much. The first question might be why? Why to make use of qualitative methods? Why to make use of qualitative methods? So, in short, in comparison to quantitative, qualitative research focuses on words rather than numbers. That's what we have seen till now. So, depth rather than breadth, I can say. Right. So, its methods are exploratory. They seek to unearth the opinions, thoughts, and maybe feelings of respondents. So, it is most commonly used to help inform new concepts, theories, and products. So that's why one should take care about qualitative data also, because it's not like that you're going to be concerned about the numerical data only. Many times you will find out that there is some non-numerical data also which is going to be very useful for analysis. And that's why one should actually try to leverage the qualitative data. That's the point, right? And that's why we have seen qualitative and quantitative both. So quantitative, we have seen that it's a number. And what is meant by qualitative? So it's of relating to or involving quality of kind, or other words from uh, sentences. Whenever you will find out sentences, it can be a qualitative data, non-numerical data, as simple as that. Okay. And obviously, why are we trying to discuss all these things? Because obviously there is some goal, there is some target to be achieved. So what is the main goal of qualitative research? Right? So qualitative research is actually aimed at gaining a deep understanding of specific organization, or maybe of some event, rather than surface description of a large sample of population. So qualitative research actually aims at providing an explicit structure, order, or maybe pattern, right, which can be found among group of participants. So that's why one should take care about qualitative data also, right? So that's why we talked about different types of data at the start of this uh, sessions only. We talked about structured, structure, Cauchy structure, right? And we talked about semi-structured data also. And then we talked about big data also, right? Now there might be a question: which data is better, whether it's a qualitative data or quantitative data? Which one is better? So I can say quantitative research is more preferred over qualitative research most of the time, because it is more scientific, and I can say objectives can be set very fast. It's faster, focused, and acceptable. So quantitative data is somewhat easier most of the times. However, qualitative research is used when the researcher has no idea what to expect. So it is used to define the problem or develop an approach to the problem. In that case, you can go and you can make use of qualitative data. That's why this particular thing is necessary. Okay. So that's why one should not only depend on qualitative data, but one should try to explore the qualitative data also. Okay. So that's a basic point for this particular point in your syllabus, leveraging the qualitative data. Right. Now, coming to the remaining points in the second unit, for example, some web-enabled emerging user researches. Right. So let's try to talk about this. Let's try to talk about online surveys in general. Again, these are again generic topics, I can say. Okay. So what is this? Web-enabled emerging user research. So what is the what I can say? What is the work going on currently? Right. What is the trend right now which is going on? Whenever we talk about web-enabled data. So which can be web-enabled data? So whenever we say this particular term, whenever we talk about this particular term, so the data which can come under web-enabled term, it can be of different flavors. So maybe we will try to see what are the new things as they are talking about web-enabled emerging user research. So so what is the emerging user research? What are the new things which are going on? What are the new products which are going to be in the market in the coming years with the help of this web-enabled data? We will try to talk about that particular thing. Or I can say, in short, I can talk about emerging technologies in with the help of some web-enabled data. Or maybe I can say user design or front ends most of the time. So whenever we talk about web, obviously internet in simple words you can say. So whenever we talk about web, there's a front end. So what are the things which which you will be able to see with the help of some techniques, and how web enabled data is going to play an important role in that. So we will try to talk about some emerging user research which is going on, which is taking the help of web enabled data. So the data which is available on internet, I guess. So as you know, in general, that technology is very fast, right? Technology is always evolving. It's evolving at a very higher speed, I can say. So the World Wide Web, WWW, as we have seen that there are different sources of data. So WWW is one of the main sources of data whenever there is data analysis. Right. So if you talk about the history of WWW, it's been 30 years old, right? It has been 30 years. So the World Wide Web is just 30 years old, but it has changed massively over the last 3 decades, I can say. So right now we can we actually all carry powerful computers in our pockets. That is nothing but mobile phone. Later on in coming units, we will talk about mobile phones also. Okay. So which means that the way we design has transformed drastically. So we started by designing standalone websites, right? So as we are talking about web-enabled data, so obviously there will be a term which will come into picture, and that is nothing but website. So how it has been started? So initially, developers, or we started by designing standalone websites, right? So standalone websites you might be knowing, so which can be used by only one person, which can run on only one machine, and so on. So then we actually designed once the standalone websites. After the standalone websites, then actually there come websites which can work on desktops, which were able to work only on desktops first, right? And then we created separate experiences for mobile phones also. There are some websites which will actually run on mobile phones, desktops, right? And there are some websites which are responsive. So there is something you might be knowing about which is called as a responsive design. So in web development, this particular term is famous. There is responsive design actually. So responsive design actually, it has, this particular thing has put an end to all the standalone websites or the websites which can only run on desktop, right? So as we are talking about web-enabled data, so just that's why we discussed about initially websites were standalone. Then we have seen some websites which were only running on the desktop, and later on some websites which can run on mobiles and every desktop. And now there is something called as responsive design actually, which has put an end to all these things, almost an end, right? So new technology is actually reshaping the way we live and work, and companies need to pay attention to the latest developments through new technology articles to continue to engage with their customers and stay relevant, right? So that's why in regard to this particular point, web enabled emerging user research, we will try to talk about some of the latest things which are going on, or some of the things which might come into future also. And again, here also you might have heard about all those terms. I will just try to put a light on all these things, right? So we talked about this all these things initially. So even if you talk about the design initially, so design has always been an integral part of product development, whether it's a car, home products, or computers. So as technology evolved, brands began to try and make design of their products fit the times, or they would risk being left behind, right? So if there is no good design, obviously there will be less number of customers, or there will be no customers, right? Right. So designing part, it's always very important, right? And most of the times whenever you talk about designing, so web actually deals with design. So initially it started with simple designs, right? Whenever you talk about even websites also, very simple designs were there, and gradually people try to develop some technologies, try to add some flavors to that. So if you talk about specifically, if you talk about mobile phones, again there are a lot of changes which are going on and which will come in future. For example, the introduction of iPhone, and maybe and on all the smartphones and tablets that follow, right? But specifically, if you talk about iPhone, so the introduction of iPhone or maybe other smartphones and tablets, it was a key moment in design's role in technology, right? Suddenly, designers needed to take into account all kinds of screen sizes and use cases. A mobile device became the primary computers for many people, right? It also required designers to think about completely new type of I can say interaction, completely new type of interaction, right? uh, and it means that there was more data than ever before that could be analyzed. So we have seen that as social media are actually evolving, obviously a lot of data is going to be generated, and it is there actually, right? So the internet became the biggest disruptor, I can say. But as companies adapted to emerging technology, they have interestingly done so with a focus on user-centered design. So user-centered design, whenever it is going to come into picture, obviously it will make use of web-enabled data. Right. Now we will try to talk about some types of emerging technologies, or I can say the next or the coming technologies, which are going to make use of these things, web-enabled data, and which will be emerging for user research. For example, right now what we do is, so you know that whenever we want to search something on Google, right? So or something on internet, what we do is we type that particular query, and then we get the results. Many times you might have also seen that, right? They have added some features. For example, you have something called as voice user interface, right? And many of you might have used that. So voice UI, it can be the emerging technology, and it is actually in many applications you will see this. Even browsers actually make use of that. So the next natural step in user interface design is the disappearance of the screen. After some days, we might see that there will be no screen at all. It will disappear. And so voice assistants such as you might have heard about different voice assistants which are there in the market, right? For example, Amazon's Alexa, Google Home, or Apple Siri, and Microsoft Cortana have become hugely popular over the last couple of years. So they are already around. if you go and if you try to research, there are already around 3.25 billion digital voice assistants being used in devices around the world. And forecasts predict that by 2025-24, this will reach 8 billion, a number higher than the world's population, right? So voice UIs have the potential to make the user experience more enjoyable and simpler. So they enable people to multitask and form a more human relationship with technology. As there is usually no screen, right? The process differs significantly from designing graphical UI, and we need to understand voice communication and how to design a conversation in order to create an effective voice user interface, right? So, but again, there will be web enabled data, right? So, web enabled data. Now, what about the research? What about the research here? So far so good. Just we are used to in other types of product design. A successful voice UI starts with plenty of user research to really understand users needs or behaviors or struggles, I can say. So what you can do with the help of this kind of emerging technology is you can go and you can identify needs of the users, or you can identify your target audience and analyze how they currently perform tasks and find the information they need. So just uncover what they might struggle with and where a voice experience might come in handy. So you can pay a special attention to users' language in this step also, and the terms and phrases they use. So you might need this in later stages or maybe in future, as it's an emerging technology. So that's one example of emerging technology which is making use of web-enabled data, right? Which is in the research and which is already being used at many places, right? So obviously you need to go and you need to define your product and its capabilities, right? So defining is one of the steps. You need to explore the scenarios someone might want to use for your voice UI for, right? So obviously all those things are going to come into picture whenever you talk about voice UI. Maybe creation of voice UI, you need to create some stories, right? Storyboards of potential situations that may require voice UI. So all those things are going to come into picture whenever we talk about voice UI. And obviously designing part for voice UI is going to come into picture. Another area where web-enabled data can be effectively used for research. It can be after voice UI, I can say you might have again seen that this particular thing is again evolving. I can say touchless gesture, right? Or touchless gesture control, I can say. So even without touching the screen, you can just gesture that particular behavior, and your smartphone or your computer is going to identify that. That's also possible. So if you people are aware about the terms like machine learning, deep learning, right? So you might be, or computer vision. So you might have come across all these things. Touchless gesture control. That is also one example where web-enabled data can be used for research. So talking about this one, touch or touchless gesture. So it was actually introduced by iPhone. I can say if people are knowing about this, it was introduced by iPhone in 2000, I think 7 or 8. So it has actually revolutionized the way we design, right? But now interaction design is evolving even further. So companies are starting to invest in touchless gesture control, which actually works by tracking the motion of person's hand. Suppose if you just try to move your hand on left side, right side, or whatever, smartphones or the what you can say devices are going to capture that, and they are going to do the task according to that, right? So just by tracking the motion of a person's hand, it can get what's the query and it can answer, right? So maybe soon you won't even need to touch your phone. That might be possible with the help of the research which is going on right now. There might not be even a need to touch your phone. You will be able to just wave your hand or pinch your fingers in the air to carry out a task, right? While many times, if you might have seen all this kind of applications also. You might have come across all these kind of applications if you specifically talk about this particular company, Samsung, so it has this kind of products. It can do the task just by gesturing the, or what I can say, just by gesture, right? Just by tracking the motion of person's hand. So Samsung, if I talk about this particular company, Samsung, so it requires you to hold a tiny band equipped with sensors. It has some products, so that you can also use as a stylus or Google's project solution, right? So they actually make use of different technologies, like radar technology is going to come into picture and so on. That's a different aspect, definitely. So these interpret the motion and translate it into data, determining what the user is trying to do. So whenever we talk about touchless gesture, devices which actually make use of this, they actually interpret the motion and translate that particular thing into data. And then they will be in a position to identify, okay, that particular person wants to do this kind of task, right? So there are different examples, like there are alarms. Uh, you can snooze, actually you can snooze alarms, you can skip songs, you can silence phone calls with gestures on something called as Google's flagship phone. Or you might have heard about Pixel 4. So right, these kind of things are available in Pixel 4. If you go and if you check, you will, or some of you might have experienced that also. Right now, this is one emerging technology, voice UI. Then there is touchless gesture control. That can be another thing. Then there comes, obviously, how can we not discuss this particular thing? Artificial intelligence. Right? AI is the bigger umbrella always. Right? So whether it's a deep learning, machine learning, computer vision, natural language processing, and so on, or data science, everything is going to come under AI, artificial intelligence. AI is the bigger umbrella. So AI technology not only powers voice UI, voice interfaces, it's also in many chatbots we have seen, right? So whenever I talk about NLP, natural language processing, so chatbots can be the example of one of the types of projects which can be under natural language processing, or sentimental analysis is also can also come under natural language processing, or it can make use of natural language processing. So in our lab, actually, whatever we are trying to do with the help of Twitter data, that is nothing but sentimental analysis. That is one example of natural language processing. So as AI technology, it not only provide powers the voice UI, it's also in the many chatbots we have seen, right? So, and chatbots you might have seen on different websites as a pop-up. They pop up in maybe on one side of the screen, right? So progress in natural language processing, especially, which deals with interpreting what a user says and understands what they want to do, right? It has led to creation of much more user-friendly experiences. If you talk about chatbots, so conversations with machines are becoming more natural, and we increasingly leave it to them to predict our next move. Right? This is where what I can say anticipatory design comes in. So it has the power to transform experiences by making smart suggestions and decisions instead of presenting us with a range of voices. Right? So artificial intelligence. This is the term actually which can say it's a bigger umbrella, and everything is going to come under AI, whether it's voice UI or chatbots or NLP, whatever. Right? So as AI and machine learning becomes more powerful, we also need to keep its limitations in mind and consider the ethics. Obviously, that's going to be the thing. But yes, whenever these things comes, wave enabled data comes, or when wave enabled emerging user research, this particular term comes into picture. Obviously, there will be AI, artificial intelligence, right? So this particular thing, voice UI or touchless gesture or artificial intelligence, along with this, there comes something called as virtual reality. Now, this particular term also you might have come across many times. But again, you can say there is some work which is already done in this virtual reality in this particular domain, and it is still going on. So it's another emerging technology with potential to change our world actually. So you might have heard about this VR, virtual reality. which is already being used in a lot of domains, right? Whether it's gaming, whether it's travel, you will see virtual reality everywhere, right? But again, with this particular thing with artificial intelligence, just a minute. With this AI, obviously virtual see AI with virtual reality is going to be really very useful. In again, it all depends on domain in which you might be working, right? So talking about this particular thing, as our topic is this one, web-enabled emerging research. So I am just trying to talk about different areas where there can be a research with the help of web-enabled data and which is emerging. So VR, virtual reality, is again one of the main topics, right? And as I given you the example that VR can be used in gaming, it can be used in traveling domain, it can be used in education domain. Lot of domains are there, right? Traveling I already told you, or just to improve the workplace productivity, and obviously healthcare domain is also there. So whether it's AI or VR, you will see use of all these technologies in these domains, right? So what VR has done is it has opened up opportunities for innovative storytelling and e-commerce, as you could try out products before you actually see and touch them in real life. So that's what you can do with the help of virtual reality, right? You can have an experience of that particular product in advance before making use of that particular product. So VR is actually transforming the way we design work, right? Or designers actually work, or as they no longer need to create life-size models for their designs, but can use VR technology to preview and prototype them. So what do you mean by prototype? So prototype is like without going on building and without going and building a real model. What you can do is you can go and you can make use of a some proxy kind of thing of prototype, right? So before investing your money in the actual product, what you can have is a prototype of that particular product, and you can imagine how it is going to look like, right? So it's exactly similar to what civil engineers do, right? So if you talk about civil engineer, what they do is they before building a building, what they will do is they will try to come up with some model, right? They will try to come up with some model before starting the actual work. They will try to come up with the model that can be that we can say as a prototype. So VR actually helps you to come up with some prototype for a particular product. So that's why voice UI, touchless gestures, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, right? All these are the examples of emerging technologies, or the domains or the areas where research is being done or it is in progress, right? Which actually makes use of web-enabled data, right? So as virtual reality completely immerses the user into new environment and usually requires headsets such as there are different headsets you can make use of. It's like Rift and all those things, right? So it's important to remember that this technology has very different set of requirements than the UI designers may be having in earlier days. So if you talk about all these things, emerging areas for research. So what does this mean for the future? So whether you are exploring voice, chatbots, AI, machine learning, or VR or AR, or gesture recognition, or completely new type of emerging technology, you will need to adapt, right? You need to adapt to all those technologies. So new technologies pose both an opportunity and a challenge. So there are many unknowns and best practices, standards and patterns that will still need to be figured out. Even though we have all these things, but yes, there are a lot of work is to be done to make use of all these things in a productive way, right? That's how whenever you talk about web enabled data, so definitely World Wide Web is going to come into picture, and all these things, whatever I talked about, those are going to be the emerging technologies, emerging domains where the research is definitely can be done, right? A lot because both of them, whether it's AI, VR, artificial intelligence, or virtual reality, or maybe machine learning, deep learning, computer vision, whatever it may be. So you can see all these kind of domains or all these kind of technologies are actually very useful in number of domains, right? So that's why they are very useful. Now talking about this particular point, online service. So again, whenever we talk about online service, now again you know that there are different ways with the help of which online service can be taken, right? So maybe through question and answering, maybe on different websites. If a particular person is running some business and he or she wants to understand what people are thinking about his business, so what they can do is they can go and they can just go for online service. So which are the best survey sites? So as we talk about online surveys, so you might be knowing about different best survey sites. So you might have heard about something called as this one, Price Rebel, right? This is one of the best online survey site actually. So Price Rebel is the best survey site. Many times you will find out. Right? There are others also. For example, you might have heard about something called as Mintwine. Again, it all depends on experience also. Mintwine is it has a perfect blend of payment amount and quantity of service. Right? If you go and if you just research, you will find out all these names. And there are others also, like for example, there's something called as inbox dollars, and it also depends on the countries. Okay, inbox dollars or survey savvy is again one of the best sites for online service. So whenever you want to go and try to have some data with the help of online service for a particular business, you can make use of these survey sites. Again, I will not say that uh, there are only these service sites. There are dozens of service sites. You will find out. Okay. Now, as we are talking about online surveys, so there might be a question that do survey really pay? Whatever the surveys which different companies actually prefer, do they get any money for that, right? Or do they pay anyone? So if anybody is making big money from online paid surveys, it's probably what I can say it's a middleman side owners, not those actually taking surveys. So most surveys actually pay. They only pay token rewards in the form of goods or maybe services, coupons, or maybe samples. So it all depends what is the purpose for survey. Right now, as we are talking about online surveys, so again there might be a question like, are these online surveys worth it? Is it good to go for online surveys? So taking online surveys actually is usually only worth if you are realistic about your expectations. I guess. So what are your expectations from the online service? If you are really realistic, if you are what you can say, if you are realistic about your expectations, then definitely online service can be worth, right? So maybe you might be spending your time, maybe you spending your money, but your expectations should be realistic. What do you mean by that? So what can you earn from taking online service? It's a simple question, right? So you can earn money, you can earn rewards, or maybe you can earn gift cards for taking online service. As I told you, it depends. It depends on the type of a business. So for many people, which can be good enough to do this service can be good enough just to do study here and there or for a particular domain, right? But yes, it's not like that. Online services are already are always going to give you some profit in terms of money only. They can help you to understand the customer's requirements also, right? So that is about online service. Again, it's a generic topic. right? There are different online service sites depending on the country. Now, talking about understanding the discipline of social analytics. So, what is analytics and what is social analytics? We talked about that. Social analytics, whenever we talk about social analytics, always there are going to be all those social media, whatever we talked about, right? So Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and all those things. So definitely they are going to come into picture whenever we talk about social analytics. Now, obviously, whenever social media is there, analysis of social media is very necessary. So you will find out that there are certain steps. If someone wants to go and someone wants to do social media analytics, right? So obviously this also is going to follow some steps. For example, the first step obviously will be what? Accessing the data from the social media, right? So you should have access to social media analytics. Access social media analytics. So if someone asks you how do you analyze social media analytics? So obviously access to social media analytics is going to be important first. After that, discovering information about your followers is very important, right? Discovering the information about followers. Whenever one is very much keen to analyze social media, discovering the information about the followers again is very necessary. Obviously, step three can be you need to have some goals or set goals to know what social media uh, actually is going to help you to measure, whether it's going to help you to achieve your metrics or the goals. So the goals you should be ready. The goals you want to achieve from the social media, you should be ready with that, and you need to check whether social media is going to help you in that direction or not. And obviously, after these things, there comes the use of different tools, which will help you to analyze social media. So last time we have seen, right? There are different tools. So one of the tools we already talked about, that is Tableau. We try to compare Tableau with Microsoft Excel. Right? So either this tool can be used, this tool can be used, or again we have listed number of tools. Another best tool in market, which is called as leaders, is Microsoft BI, Microsoft Power BI, I can say. So you need to choose the tool. Use the tools to help analyze and measure your social media. Now see, I am talking about these analytics tools, but obviously even for these tools also you are going to need data. So in one of our assignments in the lab, we will be making use of something called as Google Analytics. So what we will do in that case, once we are done with the first assignment, that is the Twitter assignment which we started last time. So with the help of Google Analytics, what we will do is we will try to fetch the data. So Google Analytics is going to allow you to fetch certain amount of data, and that data you can make use of for research or maybe for understanding purpose, or for what I can say, for some assignments you can make use of the data, for some analysis you can make use of that particular data, right? So whatever you are going to get with the help of Google Analytics, what can be done with the data is that data you can fetch with the help of some tools. Maybe you can store them, you can fetch them and you can store them in Microsoft Excel and then analyze. You can actually fetch them with the help of Tableau, Microsoft Power BI, QLink, and so on. There are different tools which are available. So the fourth step is going to be using the tools. So I am just trying to talk about the steps how to analyze social media, right? So just to understand the discipline of social media analytics or social analytics. So that can be the fourth step. Use tools to help analyze and measure your social data. There can be a step like whatever you have got from the social media, from the tools with the help of social media data. What you can do is you can go and you can actually make use of some advanced steps. Like for example, you can advance or you can increase your knowledge. You can increase the knowledge or advance the knowledge, right? Now with what? Maybe with some outside resources. you should not only depend on this, but use some outside resources to add some value to your knowledge. Other than this, whatever you got from the social media, right? So outside resources, advance your knowledge with outside resources, I can say. So these can be the steps one can actually acquire just to understand the discipline of social analytics, or to understand social analytics. This is going to be the flow, or what I can say in general, to understand the complete discipline of social media analytics. So access the social media analytics, discover your followers, set the goals, and try to check whether the social media is actually helping you to is actually helping you in the same direction, in the correct direction, or not to achieve your goals or metrics. I can call them as metrics also, because later on we will see something called as KPIs. There is a difference between target, goal, and KPI. We'll try to talk about that. So I think there is next point we'll talk about, yeah, KPI. So as we will be having class after 15 minutes, we will talk about KPI in that session. Okay. So once you have checked that, okay, it is going to help you to achieve the goals, you can go and you can make use of certain tools, and then you can have some added knowledge with the help of some outside resources also for the same goal. Okay. So this is what about this particular point, understanding social analytics, right? In the next class, we will try to talk about remaining points, aligning social objectives with business goals, identify common social business objectives. Again, this is a very same point which we have discussed earlier also. I will try to start with developing KPIs, and I will try to talk about standard versus critical metrics, and what is KPI, what is goal, what is target. All these terms we will try to talk about in the next session. Okay. So those people who have not sent their seat numbers, roll numbers, send it. I hope I have received. I think almost all of you have sent the seat numbers. So I will require it for your attendance. Just send it, those who are remaining. Okay. So I will stop here, and we will meet after 15 minutes at 11:15 for the next class, and then we will continue further. Okay. Yes, those who have not send it. Okay. Okay, all of you. Then I will stop here, and we will meet at 11:15.